Awaken Beauties, finally, it's here. The truth to empower women to true inner beauty through a healthy mind and inner biology. I am your hostess, Cassandra Keel, a 20-year salon owner, organic beauty product formulator, positive mind management, and clinical hypnotherapist. And I am here to help you stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back. Sponsored by evoquebeauty.com. evoquebeauty.com. Now, let's get to it. All right, welcome to the Awaken Beauty podcast. I am Cassandra, your clinical hypnotherapist, quantum biofeedback practitioner, and holistic beauty aficionado. And we have got an episode in store for you. So let's go ahead and frame it up. The human brain has 100 billion neurons, each neuron connected to 10,000 other neurons. Sitting on your shoulders is the most complicated object known to this universe. So how do we know how to manage our brain health? Well, today's episode starts with a story that will help frame today's mind-blowing dialogue with the brilliant Dr. Jeffrey Fannin. So the Earth's pulse is at 7.83 hertz, just like the hearts within our body. And this rhythm was determined by Dr. Schumann and is known as the Schumann resonance. So how does this affect us? Now, studies in the 60s revealed that the world's first underground bunkers shared that these young, healthy individuals became very ill, depressed, and stressed due to being deprived of the magnetic pulse of the Earth. Now, polarities, nature, and the quality of our thoughts are deeply intertwined with our physical reality, including our health, career, sex, success, and relationships. I'll put that in there, probably sex too. But in today's deep dive, Dr. Fannin and I will explore how we are the controllers of our reality and how the inner and outer influences consisting of our thoughts, beliefs, and frequencies can be revealed and healed, and how we can create a new reality on command. So let's tap into who is Dr. Jeffrey Fannin. Now, Dr. Jeffrey Fannin holds a PhD in psychology and is the founder of the Thought Genius Center located in beautiful state of Arizona. And he has led, basically this neuroscience field with research and training for over 25 years and brings forth his latest results through speaking and sharing. And he is helping individuals break free with his insights found in his book called Commanding the Power of Thought, within his online courses at Thought University, and his feature in a documentary movie called Intuition as Your Personal Guidance System. Now, with that said, it is an absolute pleasure. And where did I meet this wonderful man? None other than Clubhouse. And so, Dr. Jeffrey Fannin, welcome to the Awaken Beauty podcast.
Cassandra, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to be on here with you and share some dialogue that we're both passionate about. So I think we'll have a great discussion.
Absolutely. So we did meet on Clubhouse, which for those that don't know about Clubhouse, it is the new social media app, which I love, uncensored, which has allowed Dr. Jeffrey Fannin and thousands of individuals in these curated rooms talk on such subjects, which you are an absolute expert in. I am blown away, and I have been studying quantum physics not as long as you, but your diversity of information from studying with Joe Dispenza and your brain mapping to the books that you write, there's so much we could explore. So we're going to try dial it in, but I always start with your personal story. How did you end up obsessed with this thought field?
Well, that may go clear back to the womb. I'm not sure about that. But years ago, I was an airline pilot, and they started to have some layoffs. I was based at LAX in Los Angeles and lived here in Phoenix. And so in the early 90s, they started to have layoffs. And so I was at the middle of the seniority stack, and that dropped me to the bottom. Then they had another layoff and a reduction in force in the military. So that kind of kicked me out of the system. And I knew it'd be several years before my seniority number came up to get back in. And so I decided to go back and get my PhD in psychology and start down this road. But when you are paired up with somebody, you bid on that. And so a lot of other pilots would bid to be with me because they said, this is like going to a Tony Robbins seminar in the cockpit. So I was always interested in human beings. Why do we do the things that we do, and how does that happen? And then I got more into astrophysics and quantum physics and wondering about all of this. And so it just kind of led me now that I just naturally talk about that. I traveled around the world with Dr. Joe Dispenza for almost 5 years and did over 4,000 brain maps, talked with him, both of us on the stage, and did consultations with all these people. And now I do a lot of research. Maybe the last couple of years, been doing a lot of research with a group called Vibravision, Vibravision. Now, these individuals, not just the normal run of the mill kinds of things that we look at, but they can put bandages on their eyes. They can put a blindfold over the top of that. Then they can drive a go-kart. You can drop colored beanbags in their hand, and they can tell you what color they are as fast as you can do that. They can read from a book. You can give them a greeting card inside of an envelope, and they can read it to you, or they can navigate through an obstacle course. And so for the last couple of years, I've been mapping their brains to see how they use that differently, as well as over the years, dealing with a lot of people who are clairvoyant or have intuition or things like that, to see how they use their brains. Because I wanted to really see, how is that different than you and I, and how we use our brain in the things that we do. And so that's kind of brought me to where I am today, and doing a lot of research and validation of different kinds of things for people. And so I have a pretty diverse background here.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I can only imagine the experiences of you and Dr. Joe Dispenza in those 5 years in the research. And I've seen some of the brain mapping that you've done, and in which you've done with some of these individuals through the meditations. And really, I mean, it's so beautiful now that we're able to really bring this out, and that people cannot ignore the science and the spirituality and the coherence of these coming together, and how just how profound they are in our lives. And so just to kind of maybe start macro, and then we'll kind of move down into the micro and some maybe actionable steps that people can start to take back control of their mind, their body, and their spirit and their energy. Let's maybe just open up, your definition. Now, I do biofeedback, which I send scalar energy frequencies through sound to my clients to help bring their bodies back into coherence. It would be beautiful to see if we can kind of understand your explanation of quantum entanglement and how we all are connected.
All right. Yeah, let's start there. That's a good place to start. So when we have a thought, whether it's a wanted thought or an unwanted thought, the physics is basically the same. So when we look at that, and we have that thought, a particular thought is going to have a vibration. And that vibration is going to, if we hold that for 16 to 17 seconds, other energy that is like that will be attracted to that. So if we have two thoughts, let's say that we have two wanted thoughts, things that we are wanting. And so when they come together, the energy of those two thoughts, if they are in phase, or the apex of the energy, they're both going the same direction. If they're in phase, then that energy, when it comes together, is going to create what's known as a constructive interference pattern. Now, that doesn't mean they interfere with one another. It means that that energy is collecting. And so when we look at the physics of this, if people are familiar with something called the double slit experiment, yes, and we can understand there's this thing called the observer effect, that can change whether it's a wave function or whether it's a particle function. So when we look at the opposite of that, so we have two waves and they're coming together, but they are not in phase or going in opposite directions. Instead of that energy combining, what actually happens is it zeroes out. So that's when we're putting resistance actually into the field. And so we want to, if we have a wanted thought and an unwanted thought and a wanted thought and an unwanted thought, then we wonder why we can't manifest or why we can't attract things to us. It's because of that kind of situation. So we have to be very mindful of our thoughts and what we are thinking, because inside the brain, down in the subconscious part, there's a little almond-shaped organ there. It's called the thalamus. And all of our creative properties, our subconscious beliefs, things like that are located in the thalamus. So at the top of the thalamus, there is a set of reticular cells. And the function of a reticular cell is to bind one organ to another. In this case, the thalamus to these axonal columnar cells. And these axonal columnar cells go up from the subconscious into the conscious part of our brain. And it comes out right here where the soft spot on a baby's head is, or your crown chakra, for people who know what that is. And so when you have that thought, wanted or unwanted, it's going to go from the thalamus, its energy and information go from the thalamus up through the thalamic gate and out into what we call the ether out here. So fundamentally, we all have a tuner, this 3-pound gelatinous thing inside of our skull. And we have frequencies as a general rule from 0 to 60 hertz. That's what we're measuring. But the energy in the field way out here may be much higher than that. So when we're looking at people like the vibrovision people I was talking about, and how can they do these amazing things, because their tuner is much larger. And so they have more frequencies that they can deal with. And so it's tapping into those frequencies. So when it's a little bit like watching television. So let's say you're at home watching television and you're watching a program, your neighbor is watching the same program on their television set, but your television set goes on the blink. And now you're no longer watching the show, but your neighbor is still watching the show. It doesn't mean that the broadcast isn't happening. It means you're just not receiving it. So the tuner that we have, our brain, if you will, is more of what we would call a transducer. So it's processing all this information. And so the debate's been going on for many years. Is the brain in here or is it out here? So many people believe that as we think or we impact other things or we get direction, intuition, if you will, or tap into other energy sources, then it's coming down through this thalamic gate, getting into the thalamus of our brain, and then being distributed. So I have some research that I've done in looking at some of that aspect, and coherence happens to be a very important part of that. So when we look at all of us being connected or how we're connected to the field, one way is from the thalamus of the brain. Another way is we have 3 electromagnetic centers that are very, very important. One is the electromagnetic center around our chakras and how they're functioning and looking at that information. I'll come back to that in just a minute. And the second one is the electromagnetic center around our heart. And the third electromagnetic center is in our brain. So most of us were brought up to believe that there are more commands going from the brain to the heart than the heart is to the brain. But that's not true. The electromagnetic center around the heart is 60 times greater than the electromagnetic center around the brain. So how does that affect us? Not only with that information that can be transferred, but around the heart, there are over 4,000 neurites. Now, a neurite is like a neuron in the brain. And so it can think, it can remember, it can send commands, up the vagus nerve to the brain and vice versa, that information. So the coherence of that energy and that information is very important. So some of the studies that I've done with individuals looking not only at their brain map to see what the frequencies are and how what dimension they're in and so forth, whether they're using the alpha, beta, theta, or I can actually take somebody's brain map and build a three-dimensional model. And this three-dimensional model, we can turn it upside down and look at it in a lot of different ways. And so I can indicate which sections of the brain. So there are these 5 by 5 by 5 millimeter cubes, about 4,000 and 4,200 to be exact, of these what we call voxels in the brain. And inside each 5 millimeter cube, there's a frequency, there's amplitude, there's energy. So this is how we will send that energy and information in the brain throughout the cells of our body. So some of my studies have shown how that opens up when we looked at like an ADD individual and why that occurs. So in the beginning, I was doing a typical QEEG, a quantitative electroencephalogram, and looking at this individual. And then I would put them on this regimen of NRF1, NRF2 to open up the pathways. And these are natural, people call them supplements, but they're really activators. And these activators can activate these neural pathways. So in looking at that, I had seen things go from being very disorganized to being very organized in a matter of 12 days. And I would say, how is that physically possible? And so I would look at the equipment, look at the data, all of those things checked out. And then I would look at from a quantum physics point of view. And that is that the energy in our cells, so my friend Bruce Lipton talks about this in a lot of his work, in looking at the cellular function, that there's a relationship between the cells in our body and how our brain functions. I'll talk a little bit more about that, how we get to those kinds of issues. But when we saw that the coherence was greater, it helped this individual. It didn't cure his ADD right away, but what happened was that it opened up the neural pathways so that he could learn and take that information and energy and pass it from one cell to the next to the next. So by the end of the school year, instead of getting D's and F's on his report card, he was getting A's and B's because his brain was more coherent. And as he worked with tutors, he was able to then improve his grades and improve his learning. I had another young man that I was working with, similar kind of problem with focus and concentration. And he wanted to go to college, but his ACT scores weren't good enough to get in. So we started working with him in increasing the coherence in his brain. And after about 8 weeks, and he was taking tutorials to improve his scores, by the end of the examination period, he took the exam a second time, scored high enough, and his goal was to get to UNLV. And so today he's going to University of Nevada at Las Vegas and taking classes right now.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I just love that so much. And especially just coming off of, Brain Health Week and on Clubhouse, I think I ran 3 different rooms on neurodiversity, right? And so, there's all these scientists and neuroscientists and school systems trying to figure out how can we really, really help specifically children with neurodiverse minds. And as my training in clinical hypnotherapy, it's interesting that you had brought these together. And the way I explain it to my clients is that if you literally took out the brain and threw it across the room, it obviously could not think for itself, right? There has to be an electrical input that comes into the mind. And so I share with my clients, specifically ones that say, I have ADHD or I have anxiety. First and foremost, you don't have anything. And oftentimes with anxiety, it brings them relief to say, you may not have anxiety, but you may have not learned yet how to manage your mind better. And so most people walk around the world unawakened, unconscious, and they think and they feel and they do. And so what I explain to client is this awakening consciousness mind and becoming conscious in our life, coming to the front and foremost versus just being in our imagination all the time, which creates these kind of ADHD tendencies, is that we have awareness of our thought And then we analyze and logically assess the thought. And then we decide if the thought or the belief is right and true and correct for us. And then we give it subconscious access through the critical factor filter. Then we can choose if we want to keep it or reject it. And then we can either amplify it in our imagination, and we can locate the memories, justify it, validate it, or define it. Then we can feel it, then we can do it. So it's a very conscious way of living where we don't just believe everything that's coming in or what our beliefs are. We really have to challenge that. And I love the science that you can do with the brain mapping, because it helps people unjustify their labels. It helps people unjustify the way that they've been living in this world, that they are not slaves to their own brain. There's so much here with the brain mapping, and I just love it, and I want to sign up for it. But I think that that's the thalamus that I have never heard expressed in that way, and it makes so much sense. And you talk a lot about manifestation is really about being able to receive, right? To be in coherence and be able to receive, versus just thinking that we have to think these things and push it out into the universe to get it to come back. So maybe you can talk a little bit about really the true gift of intuition and precognition and being able to receive and being in that place of coherence.
Exactly. So let me address a couple of things to lay some foreground here in talking about this. So you talk about anxiety, and from my perspective, anxiety is nothing more than too much beta activity in the back of the brain.
Exactly.
And so that's what's firing off all the time. And so when traveling around the world and working with meditators, and I found a lot of people have no idea how to meditate, and two, they don't understand what's holding them back, like the anxiety. So we can change these patterns in the brain. There are a number of different ways. And secondly, I want to talk about subconscious belief patterns. So when we have an experience in life, we're going to put some meaning to that experience. Nothing in life has a meaning except the meaning that we give it. Then we're going to add some emotion to that. We call it a cognition. Those things get bound together with a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. So that acetylcholine then drops those things down. Subconscious belief is nothing more than a thought you have over and over and over again, and then gets rooted in our subconscious. So the conscious mind is going to really think of the things that we desire or what it is we want and things like that. And then it's going to go check on the rules. So if a person is trying to, say, manifest more money, they're thinking about it in the conscious mind, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. Now, the conscious mind can only process about 40 bits per second. The unconscious mind, or the subconscious mind, processes at 40 million bits per second. So there's an awful lot going on down there. And so the conscious mind says, I want more money, I want more money. It goes down to the subconscious mind and says, well, what's the rule? And that rule could get in there from the third trimester of when we were being conceived, all the way up to age 7 or 8, or even on through our life. What we don't realize is that we have a 5-year-old driving the train until we figure this out. And so all these things that we learned as a child, is the world a good place? Is it a bad place? Should I be happy about things or sad about things? Whatever it is, those are stored down in that subconscious, our perception of who we are and how the world actually works. And so if we are just going to create by default, in other words, what these rules says, so the conscious mind goes down into the subconscious mind, says, okay, I want more money. And the subconscious mind says, well, the rule is you don't deserve more money. So that's what gets broadcast out into the field. So our conscious mind is thinking, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. Subconscious mind says, you don't deserve more money. And that's what is actually being broadcast out through the thalamic gate that we talked about. And so it's about how do you change those things. And so there is a process where you can cause another burst of acetylcholine, but we have to have another universal law involved here. And that's the law of cause and effect. And so we have to know what we don't want in order to get what we do want by using our free will to choose what it is that we do want. And everybody has that ability. So this is about deciding what your subconscious is and what you want it to be. Now, another part of this is we have to get into what's called the receptive zone. If we go back to that idea of a wanted thought and an unwanted thought and a wanted thought and an unwanted thought, that's a roller coaster ride. We're just going up and down, up and down. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We don't understand what's going on. But if we get into the receptive zone, in other words, a vibration that is allowing us to attract what it is we want, we're not pushing resistance into the field. And so we use the words gratitude and appreciation. There's a vibrational difference between gratitude, I was where I was, and now I'm somewhere different, and I'm grateful for that. Whereas appreciation is closer to the vibration of unconditional love. Now, being in Arizona, it's a beautiful sunny day out here, and I'm grateful that it's a sunny day, and I'm appreciative that I'm sitting in my air-conditioned house, and even though it's warm outside, or I can be appreciative of my nice warm blanket and my soft pillow when I go to bed. I can find something to appreciate and then begin to put the things that I desire out there once I've opened that doorway to the receptive zone to begin attracting those vibrations of the things that I desire or that I want.
Yeah, I like how you frame up how you're pre-framing and getting the body and the heart and the mind into coherence and into that frequency before you start declaring what you want from the universe. I mean, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And, gratitude and appreciation, what you're saying is appreciation. They're both equal, or appreciation is a step higher than gratitude?
Appreciation is a step higher than gratitude.
Yep. Awesome. And, one of the things, and it is coherent, no pun intended, with a process that I take women through when I'm helping them create a new identity. And oftentimes we can get really, really addicted to wanting to go fix everything that's not right with us in order to feel worthy to be of that identity or have the things that that identity would have. And so this is kind of where I have an issue with the personal development and beauty industry, is that it's an oscillating structure that no one will ever escape. Right? So we die, like in what you were saying, in this push and pull between the conscious and subconscious mind. And so what I love about what you're saying is that, when I help women get into a meditative state where we want to get into that higher source or the super conscious, my number one, let's call it a rule, it's maybe a new rule of universal laws, is that to get into that intuition and into that innocence, you have to appreciate that you have everything and you need nothing. And
you're exactly right.
Yeah, that's where you enter through the heart coherence. And then I allow them in through the heart coherence, out through, let's call it the thalamus, into the crown chakra, and up to the superconscious. That is when we access. That's the only way to access it. Otherwise, we are in a fantasy and romanticizing and over spiritualizing manifestation.
Yeah, exactly. Let's look at the physics of that and the physicality of that. So when we look at the heart chakra, for example, that is an electromagnetic center. The electromagnetic center is actually 60 times greater than the electromagnetic center around the brain. Now, why is that? It's because there are 4,000 neurites around the heart. And a neurite is like a neuron in the brain. So it can think, it can remember, it can send commands. It can do all of these things. And it is that electromagnetic center around our heart that generates this field 3 feet in all directions that we have. And our field will interact with other people's field. So this is when you can walk into a room and you can tell somebody's upset or they're excited or they're, whatever the emotion is. And the emotions that we look at in my book, I put a chart in there talking about the frequencies from lower, denser frequencies like, depression or overwhelm or anger or things like that. And so I often ask, the question, can a person who worries a lot down in these lower, denser frequencies, can they go to excitement, love, or joy? And the answer to that is yes, but they cannot sustain it because the vibration of their frequencies is down here around worry, overwhelm, anger. And so most people on this scale don't go any more than 4 or 5 categories throughout their entire life because they're not willing to make the changes in their subconscious belief system and their perception of who they are. Because a lot of people, human beings don't like change. And so they're more willing to hold on to the old stuff, trying to use that to think their way into something new. And the laws of the universe just don't work that way.
Oh my gosh, I just love it so much. I mean, everything I say, you can put actual science and alliteration behind it. So I just love that so much. And it also kind of goes into how we talk about intuition. So someone that is very intuitive, you know, it's a gift. I don't look at it as an empath. It's like, oh, I need to protect myself. It's really, truly regulating my energy. And I am in people's energy as a 22-year salon owner, a biofeedback, all of that, all of the time. And so I've learned how to create that boundary. And one of the pieces that you talk about with intuition, and I think this is really helpful for empaths. And one of the things with empaths, as I always say, you know, especially if they come as a clinical hypnotherapy client, is that, you know, I can't regulate my energy. I just feel everybody's energy all the time. And that's really, truly not the attribute of being an empath, isn't to be able to read everybody. It's being able to hone in on our energy and be able to serve where it's necessary. And what I love about one of the statements that you use, and it so hit me, is that the difference between intellect and intuition is the I is the intellect. When you're getting that, is it in the essence of an I, that is intellectual, versus you is intuition. So it's a very ego and or service-based instinct that I think is really helpful for people to understand that are a little bit more on the clairvoyant side.
Yeah, I'm chuckling over here because you can't imagine how many times I hear that kind of story. So let's add a couple of pieces to this. When I'm working with a medical intuitive or somebody who is empathic, and when I first started in this field, it's been a kind of a hobby of mine of measuring people who are clairvoyant and who are empathic, who are intuitive, just because I wanted to see how they use their brains differently, and they do. So one of the very first persons that I ever did that to, and she said, your life path is to build this bridge between science and spirituality. And that scared me to death. It's like, no. They'll drum me out of the field. I don't want to do that, you know. And just the opposite has happened. So when I published one of the first articles that I did, kind of in my own backyard with people who do brain mapping and that are in that community, I thought I would get a lot of pushback. But just the opposite happened. People would say, well, do you have this article, or I heard this or that? And so now I can't hardly talk about anything else. So when we look at that intuition element of things, and that energy is coming through the third eye, basically, and as we get older, it begins to calcify around that. So we have to break up that calcification, and why we will call up energy through the chakra centers. And it's actually spinal fluid that's going up and causing that to break apart so that our intuition is more flexible. That way we can get the energy and information coming in from the field down through the system here. And so I think it's really important that we kind of keep that flexibility in what's there. One of the machines that I have is called GDV, gas discharge visualization. And what that means is when people put each of their fingers down on the lens of the camera, it's going to shoot a 10 millivolt charge, which is so small they can't feel that, but it causes the gas discharge to occur so that we can look and can calculate the biophotonic energy that is there. And so then we can see how that energy is affecting organs and systems of the body. We can see their energy field. We can measure both emotional energy and physical energy and look at what that does. So when I'm looking at their chakra chart, and if I see like when people don't have the coherence that they would desire to have, their heart chakra is much smaller than normal. And so years ago, when I went through a divorce and I measured my chakras after, my heart chakra had shrank way down. And so I was being more protective of that energy and not dealing with stress. Will do the same thing when people are under stress. And we call that activation coefficient. And so people need to be more in a flexible situation of how they're dealing not only with stress, but anxiety and things like that. So when we are working with people on improving that, and many of you may be familiar with a HeartMath device, which deals with the coherence of your heart chakra. And so I've been a certified trainer for HeartMath for, I think, since 2015. And so we work a lot with people on how to increase that energy, because we can measure definitively the energy around each of the chakras. And if it's displaced on the chart to the left, then we know it has more to do, whichever chakra it is, with their social circle. And if it's displaced to the right, then we know it has to do with their inner circle. And so a lot of that has to do with how they're feeling, how they perceive themselves, how the choices they make in life. And so all of these things are very, very important in order to find that balance, and why meditation is so important, basically in all these things we're talking about. And when people are meditating, it's about getting in tune with your inner being, your inner self. And so we were talking about the difference between knowing your intuition and knowing the difference between that and your cognitive thinking. So in a brain map, we can see, particularly in the amplitude in delta and theta, whether people have the discernment to discern the difference between their intuitive thoughts and their cognitive thoughts. And everybody basically does. The real question is, are you paying attention to it? So when something comes up, maybe it's a fairly nice day, you look outside and say, oh, I think I'll take an umbrella. It might rain today. And then you go, nah, your cognitive thoughts jump in and say, you don't need an umbrella. Later on in the afternoon, it clouds up and rains and you don't have an umbrella. So our intuition tried to give us the bigger picture, but we were ignoring that. And so oftentimes we will see that crown chakra displaced or smaller, where people may get that information, that discernment, but they're not paying attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I just love that. And one of the things that really just saddens me is that, you know, in such a world of information age where we have individuals like you and, you know, these other thought leaders that we all stand on the shoulders of, is that it's so accessible and the tools are there, and you have so many tools and books and literature and research, is that the cognitive overload stops us from being able to slow down and tap into the intuition and tap into the superconscious and really be aligned with our authentic self. And my concern is that because now it's so sensationalized, my true hope is that we can continue to lead with the science and help people come in with these tools that they can anecdotally see where they're at, so that they can start bridging the gap to where they want to go, and have people like you and all of us that are so passionate about this help them release their old identity that will never let them have it, right? So I love everything that you do. And there's also one last thing I wanted to kind of bring in, and goes back to this very thing, is that it all starts with our thoughts, and how we're mind management, you know, really is, to me, is the number one thing is, what is your ecosystem like? What is your environment, your food intake, your brain health? Are you getting omega-3s, you know, to build that lucidity and the cellular communication, as well as you've written the book as well. And maybe you could just say a little bit about the chapter, Help, My Thoughts Are Holding Me Hostage, to this very fact.
Yeah, that title came from a radio show that I used to have years ago, and called Help, My Thoughts Are Holding Me Hostage. You know, because sometimes we think our thoughts are holding us hostage, and really that's not true. Right. A lot of it is when we go back a ways and we look at people's attention, our attention span years ago, it goes back about 10 years ago, our attention span was about 12 minutes. Now it's down to about 5 minutes. which is pretty dramatic. We want things in an instant. And so we're not willing to do the things that help us manage that. We get distracted by so many distractions that are going on. The internet, the computer, I turned off my notifications because I keep getting those little notices that would come up on my computer. And once that happened, the damage has been done. So we're literally training our brain to be distracted all the time. Then it gets hungry for, I want a distraction. I want something, so then we go out and we surf the internet and we look at this and we look at that. And if you want to keep balance, the key issue here is to slow down, to take a few minutes to, I can't do without my daily meditation routine and learning how to go deeper. And if you don't know how, if your brain is too busy, you have that monkey mind, well, then learn how, get with somebody that can teach you that. There are many methodologies. A lot of people think they're meditating when they're hearing a guided meditation. That's good for relaxation, but you're not really meditating. When you're listening to a guided meditation, it's telling you exactly what you want to do. And your brain is not learning how to go deeper and to connect with your inner being by listening to that. And so you need to learn how, like transcendental meditation, for example, you learn how to do that 20 minutes a couple times a day, and just take that moment, that time out in order to kind of get grounded, recollect yourself, move your energies in the places that it needs to go, so that you have this constant flow. It's when your energy gets blocked that we start to experience disease, or the uncomfortability, or our cells get off and so they don't know how to respond and how to react to the things that go on within themselves. So I think it's a very important thing for all of us to learn how to balance ourselves, and how to get rid of the rocks in our backpack and get rid of all of those subconscious beliefs that aren't working for us and install new ones, because every one of us has the power to do that. The bigger question is, will you?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so powerful. I mean, it's free, it's accessible to all. Meditation is, along with the heart, is like the technology of the thousands and thousands years ago that we can all access, but we don't, right? So that's the question. And it comes down to trust in yourself that you can access this and that you can have the breakthrough. It comes down to the belief that you don't need someone to do it for you. I know that even in clinical hypnotherapy or guided meditations that I do, it's never for me to be in a place of hierarchy to tell them what to do to find their bliss state.
Right.
Even in hypnotherapy, it's conversational. So I'm helping them resolve their own problem solving in the subconscious mind, or guided visualization. I'm helping them create their own visual and creating space in that visual meditation to attach their superconscious. Because if we don't make that dream and that dream bigger dream than their dream before, we have to expand our mind so much that we fall in love with that destiny, that person that we desire to be. Call it an archetype. If you want to have it as a superpower, you need to borrow from somebody else. I never like to borrow from somebody else, but it has to be a desire so profound in the feelings in the body that it overrides the pain that you're in. And so aside from meditation, before we end today's podcast, in which I'm so grateful to you, I could talk for hours, and we will on Clubhouse, but not today. But, is there any other tools that you offer or you would suggest for people to start to find that peace, that heart and mind coherence, and the power that heals the body and really global consciousness?
Yeah, one of the things that we will do, and I wrote a chapter in my book about this, and people get a download of that chapter on thoughtuniversity.online. It's not a .com, it's a .online. And they can download that. But we will use something called solfeggio frequencies. It comes from the 3rd century. These frequencies, because we are vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe. Right. And so this is about how to change some of those vibrations. If we are very experienced at doing this, or even not, if we're just new to these whole ideas of what goes on. So with the solfeggio frequencies, when we are working with heart coherence, we will have people use the solfeggio frequencies and use the heart math device, clip it on their ear, so we can look at their heart rate variability and see if they are losing focus and concentration as a result of their monkey mind being busy, or whether they have a subconscious belief pattern that's not been taken care of. So scientifically, we can see where that is and then do something about making those changes. But you and I are responsible for our own reality and what we are, what we think, what we do. And so I would admonish people to take a hold of that you are responsible. If you don't like life the way it's coming at you, well, you're responsible for that. And as much as you might not like to think about it, it's true. That's the laws of the universe. And if you don't know what the laws are, find them out, because they're pretty easy nowadays to find out.
Yeah.
And so I would just admonish people to start taking a look at themselves. Who am I? Where am I going? How am I going to get there? And then take steps to make those changes in your life.
Absolutely. I always say, as much as overwhelmed with the information that we have today, if you really dial in, just learning about the laws of the universe, the laws of vibration, hermetic principles, it always starts in the head, right? And you think, okay, well, why can't I just get this inside me and master it? It has to be so cognitive before it can become cognitive, where it starts to become instinctive until you become it. But you also have to be it to see it, right? And just like affirmations, I always flip it right away, and I call it positivity porn. But instead of
that's a good one. I haven't heard that, but I think you're right.
It is. It's toxic positive psychology, which is no, I'm not speaking badly about the industry, but it's true. And so I always like to engage people's reticular activating system and use affirmations, where, going back to your point, you step into the appreciation that says, why is my body so incredibly healthy and in tune and full of vitality? And then the mind, the subconscious mind, goes and looks for the proof, right? So it's a way that we can flip the script and start retraining the mind. Also quantum language, right? So I can't, I never, absolutes. You're just throwing basement back, trash back down into the basement before you can get it out to even start to free yourself in the frequency world. So
absolutely right. Yeah.
And then I wanted to share this with you. So last night, one of my friends on Clubhouse, this is my guide to solfeggio tones. And so what kept coming up repeatedly in her scans is the heart chakra, cardiovascular system, and all of these elements that came around back to the heart. And she's exhausted. And she's like, I was like, you're tired. You're shut down. Your heart chakra is not of use if you're exhausted and giving out your energy all day on Clubhouse. You need time to restore and get back into your own coherence and able to give. And so I just, if there's anything else that you want to share today, please do, and then we'll close down. But gosh, I think we may have to have a part 2 and 3. So
absolutely, I'd be very happy to do that, to help educate your audience out there. You're very well versed in the things that you know and do. And I would admonish your audience to listen to Cassandra, because she really does know what she's talking about.
I really appreciate that. Well, I'm gonna push it right back over to you. And I have to say, Dr. Fannin, life is beautiful not because of the things that we see or do, but truly beautiful because of the people that we meet. And that is going to be you now in my life. And it's so great to be able to speak with you one-on-one and to continue to support you and your knowledge, both in Clubhouse and off Clubhouse. I'm absolutely going to get on your list to get a brain mapping done. And I'm just forever grateful for you. And so one last question that I do ask everybody on the Awaken Beauty podcast is, what is one thing that you have deeply awakened to on a personal level in your life as of late?
Well, that one's a pretty easy one, because I never saw it coming. And maybe a little over a year ago, and I was just doing a Zoom meeting like we're doing here the night before with some of the Vibrovision people. And I woke up in the morning and I couldn't open and close my left hand and I couldn't speak. I had a stroke. And that I knew in that moment, the stark terror that I was experiencing, that my life is going to be changed maybe forever. And so as I was trying to speak, and the words of my head were not the words coming out of my mouth. And so I practiced for a while. And because I live alone, I didn't have anybody that could take care of me. So once I was able to communicate with the operator, they got me to the hospital. I stayed in the hospital for about 2.5 days while they got things stabilized and so forth. Then they put me in a rehab center, and I was there, and I had to learn to use my left hand again and open and close things. I had to learn to swallow. I had to learn to walk. And I was only there for 12 days. And then they released me because they said I'd had the fastest recovery of anybody they'd ever seen. That's because I knew what to do inside my head. And I just started to do what was necessary to get my body to follow along. So I'm completely healed of all of that today.
That is so, so incredible. And I did not know that. And, you know, what an incredible layer on your path and your journey. And it reminds me of Joe Dispenza's, right? Where they told him.
We've had a lot of talks about that.
Oh, I mean, just
what happened in those quiet moments. And, you know, I could relate at this point, related differently when I was traveling around with him. But when you're laying in the hospital and all you have to do is think and you're inside your head all the time, you can sit there and worry and make up stories and do whatever you want. Or you can just turn that around, like you were saying, and begin to have conversations with your cells and your body and begin to make things heal and go back to what they know to do best.
Yep, absolutely. You know, I had a like-minded, experience myself where I had literally no hemoglobin left because I lived so much in my masculine body for so long, and ended up in the hospital with a also near-death experience. Now, it wasn't, debilitated like you, but my spirit, I was just cool. Here I am. I'm going to heal. Allowed that to also happen through my process. And it was interesting watching the medical team respond to that, right? Because most of the times they have people that are frenetic and off the hook. So that was really interesting for me to be a conduit to allow them to also see that process in which you were, in which all these individuals that enter into that kind of situation, because of that pre-framing of information and ways that they've already acted, been, and known in their spirit, are able to overcome that. And that's the power for all of us. But I think you would say the same as I would say the same. Nobody, and is my mission in life to help every woman understand that, number one, they are slaves, but they can unslave themselves to truly live their life and not die to have never have lived. And I know that that is your mission in life as well. And so as we come together, I'm so happy we could share time in the field. I'm forever grateful, and I'm sure I will talk to you soon.
I'm sure.
But thank you again, Dr. Jeffrey. And for everybody, make sure that you go to the show notes. I absolutely have the website there for you, the lead to his book. And then there's also a free chapter that you can download in the book to get you going and get you into the field of everything that he has to offer. And so thank you so much for listening and being part of the Awaken Beauty podcast. And until next time, stay sane, get your sexy back, and live the life you love. So, all right, we're out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hello, Awaken Beauty. Thank you so much for joining the show today. Were you inspired? Please leave a comment or your own personal aha moment so others can capture exactly what you did. Also, please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're interested in high quality natural products for your hair, skin, and wellness, including organic CBD, please visit evoquebeauty.com. Again, that is evoquebeauty.com, evoquebeauty.com. And until next time, darling, stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back.